This is 2019 Weekly. My name is Anastasia Odo. Thank you for joining us on today's episode. And on today's episode, we'll be having with us the head of administration, Youngstars Foundation, in the person of Ms. Grace Ehi Idakwo. She'll be shedding some light on the multi-party democracy system we run in Nigeria. Meanwhile, we'll be looking at the youth perception survey on the just concluded Nigerian 2019 elections conducted by Youngstars Foundation. Stay with us. This is 2019 Weekly, and this survey is aimed at aggregating the youth perception survey on the just concluded Nigerian 2019 elections conducted by Youngstars Foundation. On this episode, we're interested to know the overall responses and opinion of young people in the just concluded 2019 elections. So young people weren't asked the recommendations they have to youth candidates on ways to successfully contest for future elections in Nigeria. This is what they had to say. 36.7% of youth responded that youth candidates should launch an online campaign, trusting innovation and online platforms to get to the finish line. 20% said youth candidates need to form a strong coalition instead of having so many small parties. 16.7% said the greater the number of young people running for office, the greater pressure it exerts on the old camp, and the greater the chances of one of them being elected. 6.7% recommended a push for reduction in the cost of purchasing nomination form. Another 6.7% said there should be a push for direct primaries, while about 10% said youth candidates should run issues-based campaign. This is to say that young people running for office need to identify a community problem, speak to the problem, and speak a language the community can understand. Let's quickly look at two more questions. Do you think that both the presidential, National Assembly, and governorship State House of Assembly elections should take place on the same day? From the chart, we see 50.7% responses from youth suggesting both presidential, National Assembly, and governorship State House of Assembly elections should take place on the same day, while 34.4% disagrees. The other 7.7% are unsure. Do you think the high number of political parties have a negative effect on voting behavior and candidates voted for? 83.7% of youth from the survey think that the high number of political parties had a negative effect on voting behavior and candidates voted for. This is 2019 Weekly, and the head of administration of Youngstars Foundation and head of programs is here with us, Ms. Grace Ehi Idakwo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's talk about multi-party system in Nigeria. We just saw on the screen that about 83% of the respondents in this survey actually said that having so many, parties, had this effect on individuals and who they voted for at the end of the day and their voting behavior. So, do you really agree with this?
Yes, I'll kind of go with the 83.7% of the youth respondents in that survey because of a truth, let's just call it spade a spade. You cannot have 91 political parties that all of them field candidates in an election and will not affect voting behavior. And for, let's say, even before the election, we had 73 presidential candidates and almost all of them had dropped before the presidential election, and the materials for election had already been printed. And then let's take for instance now the coalition of united political parties had 45 political parties that were rallying around Atiku, and then 20 other political parties were rallying around the APC candidate Muhammadu Buhari. And then these are people also that have political parties that are supposed to be fielding candidates rallying around two different political parties, which kinds of make it like a two-party system that is being run in Nigeria. And then there are lots of negative effects that can come out of having 91 political parties. Like, for instance, after the election was conducted, it took INEC extra days to collate results, and it was confusing, cumbersome, and all of that. So we have to put that into cognizance too. And then also, I've talked about the waste, because they had already printed materials before most of those presidential candidates or most of the people running for election dropped out of the election, saying that they'll rally around another person, and then materials have been printed. Who pays for that waste? Do you get? Yeah. On August 16th, that's INEC announced that they were adding 23 political parties to the already 68 that we already had.
Yes.
And they announced that in August, when primaries were supposed to be in October. And a lot of people, what time do they even have to even do their campaigns? And then the voters get acquainted with their logos and all of those things. So it's confusing for the voters to just see 91 or 73 logos and then know who to vote for. So it really affected voting behavior. So 91 political parties, no.
Okay, so from what you're saying now, do you think there could be an electoral reform that says even when all these political parties meet all of these legal requirements, they don't necessarily need to have field candidates, on election day, to cut down the numbers of party logos to be printed on the ballot papers, and invariably reduce the costs of, production of these ballot papers, and reduce the amount of time and resources put into collation of results at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think that's possible, but that will have to be an alteration of the Constitution or the Electoral Act before it's being made possible, because INEC is being guided by the Constitution and Electoral Act, and then they have been given the mandate to register political associations as political parties if they meet certain requirements. So that means that out of the 91 parties that we have, if 200 come up to say we meet the requirements, INEC really has no say. They have to register that 200 political associations that have met the requirements of being registered as a political party. So what the conversation we should be having now is how can we, a policy change, how can we change, how can we alterate the Constitution, how can we rally around to see that even if you have 200 political parties or you have 500 political parties, which is even good for a democracy, because at the end of the day, it's what gives citizens or contestants or candidates and aspirants a voice. Because if I come to a political party and your nomination forms are too high for me to purchase, I can go to another one that has a lower nomination forms or lower fees for me to pay. So it gives aspirants a whole lot of options to choose from, which is good. But at the end of the day, we need to start having a conversation about, okay, fine, we can have 500, but not all of them have to go on the ballot paper. They have to be certain requirements that they have to meet before your name or your logo can be on the ballot paper. I think when we do that, it now regulates those and sift the serious politicians from those that just want to be aspirants and they are not being serious at all. Because another thing again is that before the election, a whole lot of people that came out to be part of the whole to come out on these smaller platforms to run, a lot of them were not serious. They didn't campaign, they didn't even do door to door, they didn't even make any poster and all of them. But their logo were there and they were contesting, which is kind of very sad. A lot of the people that were even part of the 73 presidential candidates, a lot of them were party chairmen. They were just filling the spaces so that it will not be like, okay, we've not met the INEC requirements of fielding a candidate. So I think when we have that conversation and we have that policy change, that no matter what, if we even have 500 political parties, there has to be a threshold that a political party will meet before your logo can be on the ballot paper. I think it will reduce the confusion, it will reduce the wastage of resources, and it will also help build our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Grace, for coming on 2019 Weekly. It has been an illuminating experience on this episode with Grace, Head of Programs and Head of Administration, Youngstars Foundation. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me.
thank you so much for staying with us on 2019 Weekly on this episode. Once a big thank you to our partners at Ford Foundation West Africa. I've been your uncle on this episode. My name is Anastasia Odo, and I'll see you